All right, that was a look at this week's Cyberly episode with Blythe Brumleve. Now I'm here with lead economist Anthony Smith for another shipper update.
That's right. So Andrew, just going to be a quick recap on some of the things that we were talking about, and that's really the importance of looking at different aspects to really get a really full foundation or a full understanding about what's going on in any market. This one's going to be the employment. So looking at shippers and their employment situation. The unemployment rate dipped down to 4.8%, so that was an expected decline. It's nice to see that consistent downward movement, although we're not below that below that 4% like we were pre-pandemic. We are nicely moving down. The other big thing is we've had initial jobs claims show a significant decline as well, down I think it was to 326,000 applicants. So getting closer to pre-pandemic levels. If we kind of start to see it skating around that mid 200,000 mark, that would be good. Continued claims move down as well. So these are segments or independent reports that are all showing good things. We saw the ADP and employment report also show that there was more payroll employment for that month of August, I believe. And so that was another good sign. And so for September, I should say, looking at all these independent reports is really telling us that all around there is really good news happening for employment, and there's a little bit of momentum, but is still a lot more to be had. So in our next chart here, we're going to look at what's going on with job openings. We're going to be watching that one closely in the coming week, and this just tells the story of
remarkable.
It's absolutely remarkable. It's just how much labor is needed. So
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we've seen so many charts like this throughout the pandemic where we've seen some sort of surge in, and usually they're bad things, right?
Yeah.
And this isn't so much a bad thing. I mean, we definitely have a lot of jobs to fill, but it's just remarkable that, I mean, we're talking about 2 times as many jobs that were open just 2.5 years ago.
Exactly.
Sorry to interrupt.
That's huge, and I think that's a great call out. And when we're looking at this, it tells me like how long can this really sustain? So some of these openings aren't going to be legitimate openings that are going to be sustainable in the coming year. So even if, say, we fulfilled all these openings, there's not going to be really that much of a need for all these jobs in the future. So really this is a product of demand. All this demand is increasing all this needed labor to really produce these goods, service all these services, fill all these roles. But once demand wanes, all these jobs aren't going to be needed, not going to be necessary. So in our next chart, we're looking at one of the other areas that we're going to be watching closely, and that's going to be retail sales. And this is going to be the area that's really driving a big part of those job openings. So retail sales, when we're looking at it on a year-over-year basis, they have really stayed above double-digit growth. And so we're expecting more double-digit growth in the coming week here. But if we're looking at that blue line, our van outbound tender volume index remaining elevated is telling me that I'm going to expect some continued elevation or general elevation for this upcoming retail sales report. But really, even if retail sales were to fall for a bit, if we saw a downward movement in industrial production, there's still going to be these sustained volumes for the most part, just because there's so much backlog to get through. So even as we start to see some of this easing in retail activity and industrial activity, there's going to be volumes for some time to come. There's just so much gas left in the tank. But because there's so much substantial demand on this side, those job openings are going to stay high, and all those services and goods are going to be needed.
Yeah, consumers are definitely powering the economy and are definitely powering the freight market so far. We think back to what Donnie said about 500,000 TEUs sitting out in the San Pedro Bay right now. That's 500,000 truckloads or a lot of trains as well. I'm also thinking back to what John Kingston said earlier. I'm not sure if you heard him, but he talked about the secular shift here going on in the economy where we have baby boomers that are retiring, exiting the workforce, but they're still consumers. They're still consuming goods and services, and then we still need people to replace to feed those goods and services. So I mean, we have all those jobs open, but we have a lot of people retiring as well at this time. There was a lot of forced or kind of like, kick them out the door during the COVID times of some of the older workers. So, I mean, but those people are retiring, and they're retiring with more money than the generation prior to them. I mean, so we've got a lot of consumer pressure pushing forward. And then, as you said, even when consumer demand wanes, inventories are still remarkably low. We've got months and months of backlog to push through there. So we've got demand pushing.
That's a big one. And I think that's another great call out with John Kingston's point about all these baby boomers retiring. The other big trend that we're seeing within the employment sector is a lot of transition, so people leaving jobs. And so I know Craig always liked to talk about it in the early days, and still from time to time, the tribal knowledge within FreightWaves. That tribal knowledge and industries are going to be a little bit diminished because you're going to see more people, hey, I'm not going to stay in this industry for 10, 15, 20, my entire career. I'm going to switch to this industry or to this industry. And I think on a broad scale, we're going to see less tribal knowledge in different industries as more people start to transition out, and especially as we see more baby boomers exiting the job market. So I think looking at it at a macro scale, there could be a little bit of a shift as more people become renaissance, and their expertise and their fields of focus.
Very interesting stuff, Anthony. Thank you so much today for your insights on the Shipper Update.